Today we've got a very special guest, as many of you know, Chris Collingwood. He's a pioneer of NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, and he's here to have a little chat with us about trading psychology. So let's say a much underappreciated often, but a very important concept in trading, particularly for new traders, even those experienced too. So we'll move on to the risk warning now. Thomas, if you please, thank you. Any advice in tonight's session is of a general nature only. Your personal circumstances have not been taken into consideration. So carefully read. And as you do, just recall we've got a Q&A box in Zoom. Please feel free to type your questions there. It does help us. It makes sure that we don't actually miss the questions as we go. We do want to try to get to them all as well. You can join us in the chat room. There's a little chat box there where you can be part of the conversation. Any ideas that you've got, anything you'd like to share, please feel free. We're a friendly bunch. So we'll move on to the next brief introduction of who we are. This is us Admirals, soon to be, or previously Admiral Markets, soon to be Admirals. We've been in the brokerage industry for many, many years, decades in fact. We're locally regulated, based here in Sydney, with great competitive trading conditions. So you're able to trade on either the MT4 and MT5 platforms, and really the flexibility of the device you prefer. So mobile, desktop and browser. Alrighty, so this is us Admirals. We're here to help, would love to help. And of course, we're excited to introduce a very special guest, Chris Collingwood. Thank you, Chris.
Great to be here.
Taking the time to be with us.
Thank you.
Chris, yep, you're a super qualified guy, accredited trainer. Chris, he actually holds a Cert 4 in training and assessment. He's, as you can all see, he's well and truly experienced. He comes from a rich background in trading, let's say trading psychology as a market enthusiast, and he's been fascinated by the space since, I believe, 1995, correct?
It's about around that time, mid-1990s, absolutely. That's where we were introduced to our first expert trader.
Okay, very interesting. We'll delve into this expert in a moment, because I know that you've got some interesting thoughts to share. But as you can all see, he's well, as I mentioned before, he's a pioneer of Neuro-Linguistic Programming, or NLP for short. Those of you who don't know, it's a study well popularized by quite a famous life coach, Tony Robbins. And Chris is quite fortunate. He shared a lot of the same tutelage under the same teacher. So we're excited. We're keen to pick your brains tonight, so to say.
Thank you.
Many useful applications for trading. Now, Chris is also a managing director and co-founder of Inspirative, a registered training organization. They provide great certificates. So we're really coming from a rich background here with Chris. So, Matt, I think the first question that we should start with really has to do with something you mentioned to me earlier. You've got a new Tesla, I believe you said.
Yeah, well, it's not that new anymore. I'm an early adopter, so it's about 5 years old. I think actually maybe a little older. It's in the second shipment of Teslas into Australia. Still feels as great every time I hop into it today as it was in the first days when I got the car.
Yeah, right. What's the psychology behind the purchase? Is there any reason why you went for, say, a Tesla over another choice?
Well, I had some reasons afterwards. It was actually an emotional purchase. I've seen some videos of people having terrific times with their Teslas. And I'm a bit of a technophile, so I love technology. Excuse me. I'm very interested in technology, and so I happen to be following Tesla and SpaceX, actually, Elon Musk companies, and I saw some videos posted on YouTube of people in their Teslas, and I thought, gee, what a car. And so I then did some research into it,
right, and
found it met, now I backed it up with rationality, so it met a number of my criteria for cars. So performance, because I've had historically a number of sports cars. So performance, safety.
Yes.
It is green, but it's not a dinky little green thing that's thrown out by
it's got a good 0 to 100, I hear.
It certainly does. In fact, when I had an opportunity to take her for a test drive, I made sure my wife had the test drive first, and she's a former bike rider. And so the sales guy said, look, put your foot down. So she did. And she lit up and she went, gee, this is just like a bike. So that's all it took to get my partner over the line, was her test drive.
Give approval.
And but they really are. They're fantastic cars. And once you get used to driving one, which only takes a day or two, because it does drive a little different, you never want to go back. So I had a Lexus beforehand, and my wife has a Lexus, and she has a 6-speed gearbox manual. And I used to enjoy taking that out for a little bit of a drive every now and again. And she actually now competes to take my car, the Tesla. So one day I was left with hers, and so I had to drive somewhere. And I used to enjoy driving her car, and it was just, it's a nice car, but it was a pretty, a very vanilla experience after driving the Tesla.
Yes, right. It sounds almost like you've applied some form of analysis to the approach. You've looked at, you know, what gets you ticking, and I suppose even though it's electric, it's kind of filled those needs.
Well, this is an interesting thing about human psychology. It's our values that drive our behavior.
Right.
So we are values driven. Now, a lot of people may not be that conscious of what their most important values are. And so what people tend to do if they're buying a car, but it could be for any major purchase, there'll be a set of values or criteria for the purchase. So I know what I value, for example, in a home. There are certain qualities that are important to me. For example, lots of glass, fairly minimalist, lots of light,
yes,
but good, good airflow. But also, I want to make sure we've got air conditioning and so on. So I've got a list of particular things. Tall ceilings, and there's a reason for that. Because if you're living in a cramped sitting place, it actually does constrict your thinking. It actually has an effect on you on how you think. So knowing the criteria, what people tend to do when they're making a purchase is to find out whether their criteria is being met by the different options that they have for making a purchase. People have criteria for trading. So there are values and criteria involved in trading. And being aware of that is an important part of being a good trader.
Sure. I can actually see this linkage, between, say, the purchases or the reasons that drove the purchase of that Tesla, and likewise, if you go to find a house, it's really a transaction at the end of the day, and that's how we categorize what we do in the markets, right? Transact, trade, buy, sell. So,
well, that's right. I'll comment on that. When you're trading,
to hear your thoughts about
you will have a set.
Let's say you've what you found from studying these top-notch traders, like the one that you mentioned before. Yeah.
So just a background story. So the work I do, one aspect of the work which not that many people trained in NLP actually do, but it's gold, is building models of expertise and expert performance. So NLP provides a technology where if you happen to have the opportunity to work with or spend time with an expert in some discipline, whatever it might be, in our case it was a trader,
Chris,
we can actually...
I may have lost the audio there.
Okay.
If you want to just do a quick sound check, we may have lost your...
How's that? Can you hear me?
Yep, that's a bit better, yeah.
Okay.
If you want to just pick up, we kind of make it out if there's any lip readers in the room.
Okay, so we were approached by a trader.
Yes.
So first of all, with our work, we can build models of expertise. So as long as we've got access to them, we can capture what they do, the actual psychology of what they're doing, the thinking processes that they use, how they organize themselves to do what they do. And that's a fundamental part of, or it's supposed to be a fundamental part of neuro-linguistic programming. So we're approached in the mid-90s by an exceptional trader, and he wanted us to spend time with him and capture and build a model of how he made trading decisions. Now, he was a very good trader. However, as you know, John, and I would hope most traders know this.
Yes, right.
A fundamental part of trading is having a trading model or a trading plan.
For sure, for sure. We hope everyone in the room understands that.
We hope everybody in the room has one. It's really important.
Yes.
And so part of the discipline, you'll find that people who are consistent at making money in the markets have, first of all, they've got a good model. They've got and they've got a set of trading rules, and they stick to their trading plan. They follow the rules.
Right.
And this, of course, leads to why there's a lot of problems, because often people's psychology kicks in and they don't follow their trading model and they get into trouble. So he had a great trading model, and he knew how important it is to have a trading model, a trading plan, and to follow your rules. And he had this situation where he would have intuitions to either take a trade or to not take a trade. And when he followed those intuitions, he was getting good results. The problem was, those intuitions were outside of his trading model.
Okay, right. So how does that mesh in with the age-old adage, trade, what is it? Plan to trade, trade to plan.
That's right. Well, that was the problem.
How does that fit?
Well, it was a major problem for him. He recognized it was a problem that needed to be resolved. So our job, when he approached us, what we agreed to do was to capture what he did, to actually find out what were the patterns that he was tracking, what patterns was he attending to in the market that informed his intuition, so that we can make an explicit model that he could then test. He could then logically and rationally test the model, and then if it held up, he could then incorporate it into his trading plan, which is what we did. And as a result, he ended up with a new trading model, which was even more effective. And I'm not going to give away it wouldn't be appropriate to give away what he was doing. However, there was some pattern. He had been trading for decades. He started trading in the 60s. And back then, when he got a wealth of experience behind him. Yeah, he had studied, so the particular instruments he trades, he was trading currencies and indices. And what he had done, he'd been looking at charts for those particular instruments for years. So he had, mentally, he had what we call in psychology, cognitive psychology, a lexicon. So he had rich memories, long-term memory, rich representations of different patterns for a specific market. And so based on years of experience, he was unconsciously detecting a particular pattern in the market, that when that pattern was there, and if he took a trade, he had a very high probability, something like an 80% probability of that being a winning trade. Now, he wasn't conscious of that. That was outside of his conscious awareness. So our job was to capture what he did, find that out, and we did. In fact, when we found the critical pattern he was detecting and responding to in the market, he went, oh, that can't be that. And then he looked at it, he thought about it, and went, my goodness, I think that's what I'm doing. And then because he is now conscious of the pattern he was responding to in the market, he was able to then deliberately test it. And sure enough, it was a very good pattern. And then it was a light bulb moment for him. I won't name names, but this gentleman now lives overseas in a lower tax regime, should we say. That's and appropriately so, because he was making a lot of money, and he had a very high tax bill. So he's very happily living elsewhere. I think Australia's a beautiful
I
place,
suppose
but
it's
anyway, we won't go there.
No, that's fine. And I think, going back to the trading and really applying it for, the average Joe trader who's trying to figure out what's the reason or what's the rationale behind my decisions, whether they be the good decisions, the bad decisions, the ones that could maybe be questioned.
Yeah.
But more or less gaining that understanding, did you find that there was one particular approach or an exercise that you took with this trader?
Well, good traders, there's a whole variety of different models, different approaches to trading. And so it's not a problem finding a good model.
Yes.
Okay, you've got to test it and get evidence for yourself that it's a model that works.
Yes.
Where people fall down, you can have somebody with a great model for trading, and where they fall down, and this is a significant problem for traders, is their psychology kicks in. So they put money. So once they've got money in the market, the emotions get involved, and
right. When you got real
that's
money,
where
you got skin in the game.
that's right.
Yes.
And there's some standard sort of emotional states that people get into. I mean, if we look at, for example, I think slide 8.
Okay. We'll quickly bring up slide number 8 to take a look at the example, just so we can all follow along.
There we are. That's now, as you can see, there's the common ones that most traders learn about when they're learning to trade, greed and fear.
Sure.
So,
yes.
however,
the old demons of traders, right?
Absolutely. Hey, we've got evidence through history that traders get greedy, and sometimes traders get also very fearful and anxious when they're trading. They're not the only emotions, though. So, for example, people get exuberant. Well, greed and exuberance often go together. So I'll give you an example of a trader I worked with. He had a good trading model. As long as he stuck to his trading plan, he made very good returns. However, you have, let's say, 3 or 4 successful trades in a row.
Yes.
And then he'll start thinking about how much money he's making and how much more money he's going to make. He'll get greedy, and then he'll get very exuberant about it. And I knew when he was doing this, because he'll get a little high, a little bit manic.
Okay. Not that kind of
so
high.
Kind of like a little bit manic and exuberant. And then, of course, he'll start trading outside of his plan.
Okay.
And then he's basically setting himself up for some losing trades. He then have some losing trades. Then he would get depressed and have 3 or 4 a number of losing trades. He'd get depressed about it, and so on. So he was like an emotional roller coaster.
Right.
Now he's just one example. This is quite a common problem.
Sure.
I mean, a similar one would be a person has 3 or 4 trades that lose in a row.
Okay.
So one after the other.
Yes.
And then they have difficulty. They start to hesitate. So they have hesitation. Yes. They start to hesitate, even though the setup looks great. It fits with the trading plan. Everything's. This is I've worked out. This is the entry. Need to go in here. That's a great entry, and all the rest of it. They would hesitate and have difficulty pulling the trigger and actually putting a trade on, because it's the emotion of having that, because they're conscious that they are thinking about they're thinking about how much they've lost. They've had 3 bad trades. So this pattern kind of points out something very important when you look at I'm talking about very successful traders who consistently make money, and average or poor traders. The good ones don't focus on the individual trades. So they don't get emotional, they don't have any emotional payoff based on individual trades. They feel emotionally good when they're following their plan. So the emotional state they have, I'm feeling good, I feel satisfied, I'm happy with what I'm doing. It's based on the fact that I'm following my trading plan.
Yes, right. Okay.
Rather than focusing on the individual trade. Now, you know, I remember working with a trader at a bank. So we did some work for three merchant banks. We worked with their traders. This is back in the late 90s then. Now, and one of them, he would get emotionally involved in every trade. Now, he'd put on a trade, and he would seriously, he would go, baby, go, baby, go, you know, yes, and he'd be
very excited.
He'd get very excited. So he had excitement, right? And then if the trade wasn't going to plan, what he would do, he would, and by the way, this gentleman, we were shocked to find out, did not use stop losses.
Okay. You know, and you worked at a merchant bank as well?
He worked at a merchant bank. Now he was one of their problem traders, and he had made some losses over the previous few months. But because he had made a lot of money the year before for the bank, they were hesitant about getting rid of him. So instead, he asked us to work with him, and sure enough, a little bit, you know, he was reckless. He wasn't using stop losses, and he was focusing on the individual trades, not the trading plan. So if the trade's not going well, he would go into what he referred to as a stunned mullet state. He'll be kind of fixated on the screen, and he was calculating. He'd be running a mental calculation of how much money he's losing on the trade, rather than, you know, getting out, rather than cutting his losses. And better still would have been to have had stop losses in the first place. But anyway, so he got into what we call a stuck state. So we did some work for him to clean that up. But he was emotionally involved, no doubts about it. And you know, when he was doing well, he felt great. However, if he had a series of poor trades, then he felt pretty bad. So one of the secrets, I don't think it's that secret. One of the keys is, if you focus on your trading plan and you feel good about following your trading plan, and I think it's even appropriate to feel bad if you failed to follow your trading plan, so that your emotional response is to the trading plan, not the individual trades. And you'll find that people are taking a longer time frame view of their trading, as opposed to each individual victory. Each individual, okay. Well,
so it sounds like we could take some parallels out of, you know, the story. We've got you know, someone who most people would imagine to be a cool as a cucumber when they trade, someone who's working at a merchant bank, but still more or less being a human, making the same mistakes, getting emotionally attached.
And there's a different psychology. So the expert trader that we worked with and studied, he was cool as a cucumber when he traded. He did not get emotionally involved in individual trades at all. It was all about the trading plan, the trading model. And that's what was disturbing to him, is when he actually had some intuitions and followed it and did well, because that was outside of his trading plan, that was disturbing. And hence, that's how he actually engaged us to do the project. So, but he's gone on and done very, very well. He's a good trader to begin with, and he's done rather well, actually. He's still trading today, by the way.
Sure. Well, this is going on a few years, and it does go to show you age is just a number when you're a market enthusiast, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah. Now, from the experiences, I suppose, of these top-notch, or let's say the guys who had an understanding, had experience behind them, and more or less maybe had to fine-tune their approach, how would you compare this to people that maybe you've worked with who, let's say, by society's eyes, should be very clever, well qualified, but they've, let's say, suffered losses due to poor management of their psychology? Do you have any good stories to share?
Once again, you can have somebody who's very intelligent and who's very good at detecting and has a model for detecting patterns in the market.
Yes.
But once again, the problem is they may be cognitively intelligent, but they have not developed their emotional intelligence. Now, that's a term that gets bandied around a lot nowadays. But shall I say this? It's something that can be cultivated, like any other skill.
Sure.
And that's what they need to do. They need to cultivate their emotional intelligence. And but if we come back to the emotions again, a lot of people think about feelings, emotions. They say, "Oh, these things just happen to them." They get caught up in the moment and they have a particular emotion. In our type of society, we're not really taught from a young age, hey, these are how our emotions work. This is their function.
Yes.
And this is how to manage them. This is how to interrupt an emotional state that's not useful. This is how to activate, for example, a high performance state for a situation. This stuff is, unfortunately, is not a common part of the culture, and we're not taught this from a young age. And however, people who emotions do have a structure. I mean, anxiety itself.
Yes.
To be anxious, you've got to be thinking about the future. So what could go wrong? What might happen? What undesirable event may happen. So in trading, a person may hesitate because they're anxious. They're thinking about, well, they might first of all focus on the past. I've had a series of losses in a row.
Sure.
Then they put their attention to the future and they imagine that they could lose some more money, and then they feel anxious about trading.
Yes. Okay. Well, I think that actually leads quite well. We've got a question coming from one of our viewers.
Fantastic.
An anonymous question. I've got a problem following my really any rules of trading. Do you have any sort of key tips, things that might be of benefit?
It's first of all, okay. So when you're trading and you're having problems following the rules, what sort of state are you in when you're doing that? Sure. First of all, so if you recognize that you're doing this, the fact you've asked the question, you recognize that you're doing this. So when you're trading and you recognize that you're doing this, if possible, it's a good time to do something to change your state. And so one thing that's useful is pause your trading, and get up and do something physical to change your state. It's one thing that people can do. So, for example, if we look at slide 11, chain of excellence. So if Thomas, you could pop that up for us, that'd be great. Here we are. So here's a little model called the chain of excellence. And basically what we're saying is that performance is a function of the state that the person's into. And by state, our emotions are states. So we use a slightly broader term than emotion. We're saying states. You're always in some state of mind, whether you've got a name for that or not. And if you want to change your performance, you need to change your state. So if you want to perform well, you want to be in some sort of high performance state when doing it. The basic leverage point for changing your state is changing your body, your physiology. So if you look at somebody who's in a, shall we say, in a lousy state, well, let's take somebody who's anxious. You look at them, their breathing tends to be high, uneven, and you can see it in their body if you learn to recognize it. Whereas if a person's in a let's say a calm state, the breathing is low and slow and even. So breathing and posture make a difference to your state. So anything you can do, you can literally shake off a state. You can move around and that will break the state. Go for a walk, go play around the golf, or do something physical, and that will change your state. And then come back to your trading. So you're going to come back in a different state. So that's just a little management thing that you can do to interrupt it. And then coming back to the rules, it's really knowing that it's the rules that make the difference. If you're following the rules for your trading plan, So I can't really question this gentleman or this person who's asked the question. But I would like to know, when they're not following the rules, where is their attention? Is there attention on a specific particular trade setup or a potential trade, rather than focusing on,
following the rules?
Following the rules,
executing like a machine, right?
Yeah, and part of it is changing your time frame. So if I'm taking a broader time frame, and it's about, am I following my trading model week by week, month by month, rather than focusing on the individual trade. I mean, there are other emotions that people get into, is the fear of missing out. That's a real FOMO. You see it with traders. So
yes, chasing the breakout.
They're chasing the breakout. Okay. Well, if you're chasing the breakout, you've missed it. Really, it's too late. But they don't want to miss out, so they jump in. They jump in too late. And whereas if you've got a particular model for an entry, well, and it meets all your criteria for an entry, then you do an entry. Simple as that. Sure. However, if you're chasing a breakout, that's going to get you into trouble, guaranteed. Now, you might get away with it once or twice. That's the problem. If you do get away with it once or twice, it reinforces. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that I was saying about having a trading plan and trading your plan. Have a plan and trade your plan. I mean, yes. It's been around for a long time, and it's there for a damn good reason, because it works.
It's an old adage for a reason, and a good reason at that.
Yeah. And by the way, the attitude I take is, okay, so I miss an entry. So what? There are so many possibilities. There are going to be other potential, great setups in the future. So I miss one. So what? There'll be another one.
For sure. More fish in the sea, as they say.
Yeah. So that I hope that was a useful response to the gentleman's question.
Oh, well, look, if there's any,
it's anonymous. It might be a lady too. So it might be to the person. So my apologies.
Well, he, she, if they'd like to extend on it, please feel free. Hopefully, we've answered the question to your liking. A wise man once told me, when it comes to trading a strategy, or let's say formulating this strategy, he had a really good analogy, right? It's almost like building a car. You're designing the car. You're let's say putting the car together. But then there's also the step of learning how to drive that car. And would you say, Chris, that at this stage, it's really where that psychology element, the risk management element even comes into play? It's not just about the execution.
Yeah,
that was also,
Yeah, I agree with that. And it kind of brings up something for new traders, novice traders. There's a lot of information to take in, and there's a lot of information that you need to take into account in terms of finding an appropriate trade entry, let's say, or for that matter, exit criteria. And it can be overwhelming. And what you find is, so when you learn to drive a car, it's difficult at first. It takes a lot of conscious attention, and you've got to practice it. You've got to have disciplined practice. And then what happens, that skill, that complex series of behaviors that makes up driving a car, the term we use in psychology, it automates. So it becomes automatic to the point now when you drive a car, you can have a conversation with a friend, you can listen to, you can have something, you could be playing something in the background as well, and you can drive perfectly fine. Okay, so you've got that.
You've removed that fear element, the psychology, the underlying psychology.
Yeah, because the skill itself, the skills that go into driving have become automated. Now, when you're a novice trader, you've got a lot of information to attend to. So what you do is you practice, and with practice, your ability to detect patterns that fit with your particular trading model automate. So it gets to the point you can look at a chart and you can very quickly see if there's any potential setups, and then do a bit more research. But you can spot the patterns very, very quickly, because you've had enough practice to be able to quickly detect those patterns. It's that the skill itself becomes automated through practice, and that's where I relate that back to learning any complex skill like driving a car.
Yes, and trading.
And trading.
Doing technical analysis, fundamental analysis, really any aspect of trading or investing, right?
That's right. And whatever the particular methods you use, your technical analysis methods you use for your model, you practice that. And of course, you know this, John. That's why it's always a good idea for a person to start off with a demo account and to rehearse.
Car first.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then when you're competent, then you're ready to put money in the market.
I'm quite keen to dive more into, say, the practical approaches, but before we get there, it's maybe more logical. Say, let's say an amateur or even an experienced trader, someone who's already working a plan. What steps could they take to let's say, identify the state they're in, maybe to become an exceptional trader, as you say?
Okay, so now this is a non-trivial question,
Sure.
and it takes a bit of time and discipline to learn to do this. So for example, one way to help this is to keep a trading journal. Now, now it's a good idea to have one anyway from a technical trading point of view. So you've got a journal, maybe a spreadsheet, date, whether you entry criteria, exit. You have some notes about what your exit criteria is. You want to know your exit before you go in, of course, before you do an entry.
Yes.
And you have some notes on that. So I suggest have an extra column, and the column is, I'm about to take a trade. What's my state? So how do I feel?
Right, okay.
And just jot down. Yeah,
do you have any suggestions for how to categorize these feelings or these states?
Well, whatever way you categorize it. So I might, for example, I feel confident. Let's say, so I make a note, confidence. Or if I feel uncertain, I'll write that down. So even though my model says yes, everything's here, all the entry criteria is met. Okay.
Yes.
However, I feel uncertain. Well, the fact I've written that down, if that trade doesn't work out, that's useful feedback that, well, I wasn't 100% congruent about taking that trade. I was uncertain.
Yes.
So that's worth noting. And so that's part of it. And also, for whatever state you're in, I note my posture. I will note my breathing. Where's my attention? Do I have a lot of, we've got two types of vision. We've got something called foveal vision, that allows us to focus, and we've got something called peripheral vision.
Right.
Now, sometimes when people get into poor states trading, it becomes so foveal that it becomes like tunnel vision.
Yes.
So if I'm aware, oh, this is what I'm doing,
right.
It's a pretty good indication that this is not a suitable state to be in when making a trade. Yes, so our bodies give us feedback about our emotions, for sure. Okay. It's a matter of just learning to pay attention to that. And if that's the case, if I'm becoming, you see this when people are obsessed with something, they become tunnel visioned. It's not a good state to be in for making a decision or executing a trade. It's just not appropriate.
Well, especially when you fixate on that fear of loss or that fear of missing out, right?
Yeah.
Geez, I don't want to suffer this. I'll do anything to avoid it, or I really don't want to miss out on this opportunity, and And more or less that would inflame that.
Yeah, and when a person's doing that, so they say, oh, look, I don't want to miss out on this opportunity. Where is their attention in time? Is in the short term is where their attention is.
Yes.
Whereas if you're following your trading plan, it's medium to longer term. My goal is to become a successful trader, be a successful trader consistently through time. That involves a broader time frame. So that's another component of our emotions is where, how am I using, where am I attending time-wise?
Audio again.
Oh dear.
We might just need to do a quick sound check.
Okay, how's that?
John, could you speak up as well just a little bit, please?
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, that's
okay. Yep, nice, Chris. We're back.
Okay, testing. Okay, that's good. So if I'm just focusing on the short term, the immediate present, that's probably not a good thing for trading. Expand the time frame.
Okay. So let's say you've identified the state. It's an unfavorable state. It's one that you don't want to be in necessarily. What steps could a trader take within the short time frame? Let's say, what could they do to reverse this state or manage this state better?
It is. I would get up and change my physiology and my breathing. Get up and do something physical. Take a break, and go for a walk. Do something, and that will help to break the state.
Sure.
Now there are more sophisticated ways of doing this. I'll mention one, and typically people need a bit of coaching learning how to do this. But so, for example, John, you're trading, and let's say you recognize that the state you're in is not conducive to high quality trading. First of all, appreciate the fact that you've recognized that. So that's really, really useful. That's great. If I said to you, physically stand up and walk away from the screen, and then turn around and look back at the screen from a distance, and as if you could observe yourself there.
Right.
Now, this is a process that's been part of NLP since 1986, actually. It's called a perceptual position, or an observer position, is what it is. It's now recently been introduced into psychology, and they call it witnessing. So they've taken the idea, given it a new name, said, hey, it's ours, it's witnessing. Well, anyway, it's the same pattern. The pattern is standing back as if you can observe yourself, as if you're an outside observer.
Right. Okay.
So if I think about myself as being an outside observer, and observing Chris and sitting down there in front of the screen, I get a sense of detach. It helps me to detach from it.
Yes. Be more reflective, or kind of see from a different perspective.
Yeah. And that often, that is a very good way to break that will interrupt a state very, very nicely. And then having done that, so as an observer, I then consider, now what are my objectives here? Okay, my objective is to follow my trading plan. Okay, so I'm going to walk back to the screen and review my trading plan, and then have another look.
Okay. And do you find that if, let's say, after trying, you're not able to make sense of it, do you find that even at times it's best just to walk away and find another day, sort of, so to say? Yeah,
if it doesn't make sense, then you've got no business placing a trade.
Yeah, right. I remember you had a good way of saying it. If you're not in a state to drive a car, you're not in a state to trade, right, or to look at the charts.
That's right. So, and we know from this is why we have drink drive rules. If you've been drinking, you shouldn't be driving.
Yes.
And by the way, you should never drink and trade either. Very bad idea.
Definitely.
I worked with a trader that did, and even I said that in jest. I've had one client who used to like a bit of a drink when he was trading, and it was not good for his trading.
Yeah, and the liquid confidence gives too much confidence.
That's right. They used to call it Dutch courage, but no offense to the Dutch. No offense to the Dutch. But anyway, or fatigued. You know that being fatigued when driving a car statistically is as dangerous as being drunk.
Gee, right.
So you should never drive if you're fatigued. And by the way,
we can apply that to trading too.
Yeah, and even though I love driving, I love driving my car. If I'm fatigued, I will actually ask my partner, would she mind driving? Because I won't drive if I'm fatigued. It's just too dangerous. And certainly one should never be trading when fatigued. Because it's going to skew your thinking,
your perspective,
emotion,
cloud the judgment.
It will. And I know guys, sorry, men and women, I know people who would be up all hours of the night in front of a screen trading.
Yes.
Right. And if their trading model is such that you have to be up at 2 o'clock in the morning, looking at a screen, looking at a particular market, then maybe you need a better model,
right?
Or a different model, because if you're fatigued, that can really get you into some bad trades.
Yes. It's like with any other complex skill, right? You wouldn't want to operate it when you're not at 100% capacity.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially when it's when there's money involved. So I want to dig in a little bit deeper with, say, the NLP side, because of course it's a very interesting study. It of course has a very close relationship with the identifying states, and of course moving between these states, being more dynamic, let's say. So how have you found NLP? How does it relate to trading? How does it maybe benefit traders?
Okay, so first of all, NLP, even though if you look out there, people, you get the impression that NLP is about learning to be a coach or something, right? That's the impression you get from some of the more commercial organizations. But the fact of the matter is, the heart of NLP is building models of expertise and expert performance. And trading is an area where you have a small percentage of very successful traders. So you have a small percentage of expert traders. So it's a ripe area for building models of expertise for trading. And so it's because of our NLP skills, we're doing a project with this particular trader. But as a result, I've done some work with some other expert traders as well. And so NLP provides a great vehicle for building models. Now, including building your own trading model, your own technical model. So it's good for that. And then, of course, there's an obvious good fit, applying NLP for managing one's emotional states. I'll make a distinction between, I'll talk about psychology for a moment. In the world of therapy, it really is, no offense to any psychologists, but it's the models they use for psychotherapy are models that were developed in the 1960s in psychology. Right. And they're not very, when it comes to emotions, they're not very sophisticated. So, for example, it is a belief in both psychology and medicine that anxiety and depression are very difficult for people to change. And you meet people who have been depressed for years, they end up being drugged up with antidepressants with their GP, or if a better choice is to have some therapy, but it can be weeks, sometimes months of psychotherapy. And that, to me, that says that's a problem with the models, the approaches taken. So NLP has a number of models for working with states or emotional states. I'll use a slightly big, we use the term states because emotions are simply states that are common enough in a culture and a language to be given a name. So anxiety is common enough in English. It's got the name anxiety. You've got a similar name in Spanish, by the way. However, for example, there are named states, emotions in some other cultures and languages that we don't have in English. One would be Schadenfreude. Schadenfreude is a German emotion. Now, the rough translation into English is to take pleasure in somebody else's misfortune. So what that says to me is that the fact it's a named state, it's an emotion in the German language, means it must be common enough to be recognized and labeled. But we don't really have Schadenfreude in Australia, though in recent years I've heard people, the word is being incorporated currently into English. You hear it occasionally.
Yes. Do you hear, is the word shade by any chance? Something along those lines? Throwing shade?
Well, it's related. I think it's related. Schadenfreude is to take pleasure in somebody else's misfortune.
Yes, yes.
I don't know enough about German in terms of the root of the word, but certainly it's in German and not English. We have some emotions in English that won't be available in other cultures. So for anybody who's listening, who is watching, who has a second language, think about the fact that in your other language, the question is, do you have some emotional states that you just don't have in English, and vice versa? Okay, because it's highly likely. So the way we think about it, emotions are just states, and all states have a structure. And if you can unpack how it works. So to be anxious, I have to think about the future in a particular way. I don't feel anxious about the past. But to feel guilty, I've got to focus on the past, not the future. So guilt is a past focus one. Happiness is typically in the present because some important values or criteria have been met in the present. I feel good, I feel happy. So determination would be about the future. I'm thinking about a future outcome, and I have the state of determination to achieve that outcome. So you've got a time component. You've got how we use our physiology, our breathing pattern goes with it. Excitement tends to be fast, fast breathing. Relaxation is slow.
I mean, so the ultimate aim is to reach that performance state, right? To have that performance.
So if you know how an emotion works, then you can change it. So I don't care what it is, it can be any emotion you can change. Because if you understand the structure of it, you go, well, this is what I'm doing, this is how I do it. Is this useful for me? No, it's not. Let's change it. And I mean any emotion can be changed. It's just we live in a culture where we don't put attention to, we haven't trained, we haven't learned. This is how our emotions work. This is what they do. This is their function, and this is what we can do to change them. So there we are. We're gonna. So back to this. There's some notes. So keeping a trading journal so you can start to track what emotional states you are in when you're making trades. It's very useful. And then start to become aware of what am I doing when I'm in, what am I doing when I'm in a particular state? It has am I using a lot of foveal vision, peripheral, some combination? Do I have a lot of tension in my body or not? What's my breathing pattern like? And then what happens?
Pick up with the excitement. Do you start to get the butterflies?
Yeah, exactly. I will make a side comment. A gentleman who's since passed away used to fly aerobatics, Air Force aerobatic team. And what he used to say to people if they had butterflies, anxiety about a future, about before going into to do something, he said, look, just fly your butterflies in formation.
Sure.
Okay. And of course, they get a little state change. But yeah, it's important. And if you're aware, if you start to become aware of what you're doing emotionally, before you know what's happening, you're actually starting to change your state.
Sure. So if I'm seeing the connection here, then the emotion, it's the, let's say the conceptualization of this state, and us as a participant and analyst of charts, we're looking to more or less optimize our thinking by identifying the reasons. Like, why do we get these yips, as you like to call them? Why do we get the butterflies?
Yeah, and it's a little more than why. Is how do I do this? How am I doing this? Because if I know how I'm doing it, then I can change it. So if I know, I go, oh yeah, I'm focusing in, I'm becoming tunnel vision on a particular potential trade setup. Okay, I know I'm doing that. Okay, I'm going to step back, shake it off, take a walk, step back from it, refer to my trading plan, then come back. I'm going to be in a different state when I come back.
Yes. To break the state, as we can actually see from these notes here, shaking it off. As Chris also mentioned before, shifting that psychological time frame. So let's say breaking out of that micro view and trying to see the big picture. What is it that motivates you? That sort of thing.
I mean, what are you trading for? And I think if we were to go to, let's say, slide 13, outcomes and intentions is useful at this point. So do you know what your motivations are for trading in the first place?
Yes. We'll take a quick look at slide 13, just while we're talking about the outcomes. So
if my outcome is to be to trade consistently, to trade my trading plan consistently through time, that is a very different outcome to, let's say my outcome is to make lots of money. Sure. Now, whereas we know if you've got a good trading model and you've done the math on it, you can, you will make money, and you want to be trading consistently and following your plan. Well, that's good. Whereas if I want to make a lot of money and I want to make it quickly, that outcome is likely to get yourself into serious trouble trading.
Well, if it was that easy, everyone would do it, right?
Exactly.
Everyone would be millionaires. But it's it's not quite that simple. Now, I've just realized we might be coming close to time, and we wanted to give all of our lovely viewers a chance if they had any questions before we wrap up the session about trading psychology. If you've got any questions about managing or staying to your plan, now's the time to ask. Of course, we do have sessions planned in future where Chris will have you return and maybe run through some more practical workshops, some breathing exercises. Maybe we can look at how ideally we can track these states in a trading journal. Because I know for one, our team here in Sydney, we do come across plenty of new traders who tend to overlook or let's say undervalue the keeping a trading journal. To some, it's a no-brainer, but to others, it's too much work. I can't be bothered. But Chris, would you agree that could pay dividends keeping one?
Yeah, absolutely. So I remember I did a piece of work with a business leader, a very successful businessman, and one of the key principles that he used is in his business, you have to measure. You've got to measure everything. He said, if you've got no measurement, you've got no feedback, and you're not going to get any change. So if you think about
audio again.
Okay, how's that?
We'll have that one fixed up for next time. So hopefully we've got some continuity in the audio. Chris, I think you might still be out. Oh, that's all right. Good.
Okay.
So if you want to wrap up, we'll also have a recording made up afterwards for anyone who did miss out earlier. So Chris, apologies if you want to just pick up.
That's okay.
Where you were
okay. So this businessman I was working with, he measured everything, and that way he measured performance. Like any business, decent business are going to measure performance. Well, if you're trading, think about it as like a business. Your business as a trader, you need to measure, and trading journal is very, very important. So if we were just to, I mean, people can look at that later. That's quite useful too. What I would suggest is, if you're starting off trading, start thinking about what are my outcomes?
Yes.
For trading. What are my criteria? How am I going to measure my success? Then you want to make sure you develop a good trading model and a good trading plan. So you've got to have a trading plan, and you've got to test your trading plan.
Sure.
And then start to keep a journal. Track your own states as part of your journal. and that gives you feedback on your trade, on the emotions involved with trading. The ideal place to get to as a trader is being comfortable and resourceful when you're trading, and not getting emotionally involved in individual trades.
Yes, having that wider, broader perspective.
Yeah, and that does make it makes a difference.
Definitely. And I think it's been an absolute pleasure having you on today. And, you know, I do look forward to our future sessions. Hopefully we can delve a little bit deeper into some more of these actionable tips. You know, like we said earlier, we will have a recording online for your viewing pleasure. And as well, the slides will make available. Now, if there's any attendees here tonight who wanted to get in touch, Chris, how might they better reach out or maybe get in contact with you?
Okay, well, one is I've got a website, nlp.edu for education, .au for Australia, so nlp.edu.au, and we've got a contact form there. That's one approach. I'm very happy. You can see the name of the company up there, Inspirative. So if you were to send an email, chris@inspirative.net, that would get through to me. I'm happy if you want to phone me, you know.
You're too kind.
So, yeah.
Of course, if anyone is excited to or would like to get in touch, if you've got other questions afterwards as well, please feel free. You can also contact your account manager, you know, whack your emails through, your questions through, and we can always forward them onto Chris as well. Until next time, of course, when we catch up again for maybe a part 2 or again, more of a workshop sort of setting. Before we wrap up, Chris, did you want to leave us with any final words, any golden little tidbits?
Yeah, I would say just know what your outcomes are for trading, and make sure you've got a good trading plan that's you've tested. Keep a journal and start to pay attention to the emotions, you know, the states that you have when you're trading, and because that's the first step, awareness, to be able to change your state and have choice. Yes.
Excellent. Well, guys, if you've taken something away from today, I think that's job well done for us. Of course, if you're keen to check out some more educational sessions, we do a live trading session every Wednesday. So tune in via our website, pop in your email to get your own link. And of course, stay tuned because we'll have Chris return in future, in the very, very near future. So fantastic. Thank you all so much, Chris. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, and thank you for everybody who's listened and watched, and thank you, John. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. All right, guys. Good night. Take good care, and happy trading. Bye for now.